Folks, let us sit back, take a long, deep breath, and look at how the global macro chessboard is actually being played right now instead of how the financial media wants you to think it is being played. We are staring down the month of June, and the sheer amount of retail noise out there is at an all-time high, which usually means it is the absolute best time to sit perfectly still. Drink some coffee, and look at where the massive institutional heavyweight capital flows are quietly positioning themselves. If you are still running around trying to day trade every single micro headline or looking for some secret algorithmic trading strategy that promises to make you a millionaire by next Tuesday, you are actively participating in your own financial destruction. True wealth accumulation is a game of supreme boredom, extreme discipline, and a complete refusal to entertain the emotional highs and lows of the retail crowd. Complexity is a status signal for people who want to feel smart but stay poor, and the moment you realize that a flat, uninspired, bi-weekly discipline is the only thing that actually moves the needle, you finally stop being a victim of the market and start being a beneficiary of it. If you cannot explain an investment thesis to a 12-year-old child, you are just gambling, plain and simple. So today we are going to look at 5 specific positions with undeniable structural backing that are setting up for massive shifts, and then we will look at a highly asymmetric situation in the biotech sector. We have to begin this breakdown with asset number 5, which is USA Rare Earth, a company that sits directly at the absolute focal point of the recent high-stakes geopolitical discussions between the United States and China. Look at the raw reality of modern manufacturing, because right now, China controls roughly 70% of the entire global mining capacity for rare earth elements and a staggering 90% of the actual chemical processing facilities. These are not optional materials that tech companies can just swap out when relations get tense. Because these specific metals are the foundational components required to manufacture the high-power permanent magnets found inside every single piece of advanced military hardware and modern technology on Earth. We are talking about the propulsion motors in electric vehicles, the guidance computers inside precision missiles, the actuators inside F-35 fighter jets, wind turbines, commercial satellites, and medical imaging technology. If the Pentagon wants to construct a single advanced defense system without relying on components manufactured by a foreign adversary, the current physical reality is that they simply cannot do it because the domestic supply chain does not exist at scale. This specific company owns a massive proven mineral deposit located at Round Top Mountain in West Texas, which is essentially a giant concentrated pile of heavy rare earth metals sitting securely inside American soil. Furthermore, they are actively constructing a specialized manufacturing facility in Oklahoma, designed to process these raw materials into finished commercial-grade magnets, so the domestic supply chain never has to touch foreign soil for processing. The market is completely mispricing this situation because it treats mineral independence like a standard cyclical commodity play, completely ignoring the fact that national security crises do not care about standard market valuations. The White House, the Department of Defense, and Congress have all repeatedly stated that the current reliance on foreign processing is a critical vulnerability, which is exactly why Uncle Sam has stepped in to become a major structural partner in this exact project. When you analyze the actual capital structure of this company, you realize that the United States government is not just cheering from the sidelines. They are deeply entrenched as a direct shareholder, a massive senior lender, and an active research and development partner. Specifically, the government holds a 10% equity stake in the company through more than 16 million common shares, paired with over 17 million warrants. On top of that direct equity alignment, they have received $277 million in direct cash grants via the CHIPS Act, alongside a massive $1.3 billion senior secured loan from the exact same government program. There is also an active partnership with the Department of Energy, utilizing national laboratories to refine advanced rare earth separation technologies across their designated facilities in Colorado and West Texas. This represents a total sovereign capital commitment of over $1.6 billion, which is part of a much larger $18 billion critical minerals initiative designed to completely sever the domestic supply chain from foreign leverage. When you buy into a situation like this, you are trading the narrative tailwinds first, because the absolute truth of the market is that prices move based on narratives in the short term and fundamentals only matter over a multi-year horizon. Geopolitical friction acts as an immediate catalyst for these shares, and every single time the trade friction increases, the capital flows rush right back into domestic infrastructure assets. There will be constant volatility, and the company will undoubtedly need to manage its long-term capital requirements through various financing mechanisms over time, which always introduces a layer of near-term risk. Mining operations are notoriously slow, capital-intensive, and prone to logistical delays, which is exactly why the retail crowd loses patience and dumps their shares at a massive discount right before the actual structural thesis plays out. Never follow the emotional swings of the crowd, because they will buy the top when the headlines are screaming and sell the absolute bottom when the project is quietly hitting its developmental milestones. Moving on to asset number 4, we have CoreWeave, a position that is currently trading significantly below its historical high watermarks, creating an incredibly clean setup as we move into the next operational cycle. To understand why this company is eating the traditional tech landscape, you have to understand the fundamental difference between legacy cloud architecture and modern artificial intelligence infrastructure. The massive cloud monopolies that dominate the world today, such as Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, and Google Cloud, were systematically engineered over the last 2 decades to run standard corporate software, web hosting, email servers, and corporate databases. They are general-purpose systems designed for distributed workloads, whereas artificial intelligence demands a fundamentally different physical architecture built from the absolute ground up for high-density parallel computing. CoreWeave is a specialized next-generation cloud operator that does one single thing. It purchases thousands of top-tier graphics processing units from NVIDIA, installs them into custom-engineered high-density data centers, and rents out that raw computational power by the hour. Artificial intelligence companies use this outsourced infrastructure to train and operate their massive foundational models, which is infinitely more capital efficient than attempting to build their own multi-billion-dollar data centers from scratch. The customer pipeline for this business is absolutely astronomical right now. Yet the average retail investor is completely blind to the scale of the locked-in revenue contracts. Meta Platforms has recently expanded its infrastructure commitment by signing a staggering $35 billion long-term agreement with CoreWeave that extends all the way through the year 2032. Jane Street, widely recognized as one of the most sophisticated quantitative trading operations on Wall Street, just locked in a $6 billion computing contract while simultaneously injecting $1 billion of their own capital directly into equity shares. NVIDIA itself has poured $2 billion into this company, creating a powerful structural alliance where the chip manufacturer actively prioritizes their hardware deliveries and guarantees to absorb unused capacity if it ever materializes. This effectively de-risks the entire operational model. And when you add multi-year infrastructure deals with OpenAI and Anthropic, the company sits on an absolute backlog of over $66 billion in signed contracts, waiting to be recognized as direct top-line revenue. The market treats this like a speculative startup, completely failing to realize that the largest technology companies on Earth are aggressively competing to secure this capacity years in advance. The immediate catalyst is staring everyone directly in the face because the major semiconductor earnings reports are dropping in a matter of days, and the accompanying management commentary regarding global artificial intelligence infrastructure spend is going to send shockwaves through this entire specialized sector every single time a major technology hyperscaler upwardly revises its capital expenditure guidance. The downstream revenue expectations flow directly into this specialized cloud network. The core risk here is obviously revenue concentration, because when a handful of massive technology firms represent the vast majority of your contract backlog, any systemic shift in their individual spending patterns will cause massive liquidations in the short term. They have also accumulated a substantial debt load to aggressively fund this global data center build-out, meaning that if the broader macroeconomic environment causes a temporary slowdown in capital deployment, the stock will get absolutely hammered. I view those exact moments of systemic panic as supreme buying opportunities because the underlying physical demand for computing power is not a temporary trend. It is a permanent structural shift in global productivity asset. Number 3 brings us to Nebius Group, a company that makes the standard retail investor highly uncomfortable because it is currently trading right around its all-time highs. Breaking the basic psychological rule of wanting to buy things that look cheap on a simple chart, I personally prefer to accumulate shares on a clean pullback, but ignoring this asset right now is an act of sheer ignorance because the near-term operational momentum is simply too powerful to ignore. Nebius operates the exact same core business model as CoreWeave, renting out specialized high-density computing clusters to top-tier artificial intelligence developers, but it possesses a far more complex and interesting corporate narrative. This company was born out of the massive restructuring of Yandex, often referred to as the Google of Russia, where the brilliant founder Arkady Veloz successfully severed the most valuable forward-looking international technology assets and relocated the entire corporate headquarters to Amsterdam, now operating completely free of legacy geopolitical baggage. They are scaling a world-class computing footprint across Europe and North America at a pace that is completely blindsiding the traditional analyst community. What makes this asset incredibly unique compared to a pure-play cloud provider is that when you purchase these shares, you are actually acquiring an entire portfolio of highly disruptive technology businesses under a single corporate umbrella. They own Avride, an autonomous vehicle and delivery robotics venture that operates completely independent of traditional automotive constraints. presenting a massive valuation catalyst as autonomous vehicle public offerings begin to gain serious traction in the current market. They also control Toloka, an enterprise-grade data platform that manages the massive human-in-the-loop data annotation and reinforcement learning processes required to make foundational models intelligent. On top of that, they operate Tripleton, a highly profitable digital bootcamp that is reskilling thousands of workers for advanced technical careers. Their recent financial results were an absolute masterclass in operational scaling, with total quarterly revenue exploding by 684% year over year to nearly $400 million. Driven almost entirely by their specialized artificial intelligence division, their annualized recurring revenue has surged to nearly $2 billion in a matter of months, while their adjusted profitability margins expanded from a loss to a highly impressive 45% positive returns. The big macro narrative driving this asset is European technology sovereignty, because European corporations and regulators are deeply terrified of having their entire economic future hosted on data centers controlled exclusively by American or Chinese monopolies. Nebius is rapidly building out localized, highly compliant sovereign infrastructure within Europe that foreign operators simply cannot match, while simultaneously expanding into the United States with a massive new factory footprint in Pennsylvania backed by over $20 billion in capital expenditure guidance. The obvious risk here is the inherent complexity of their corporate history, which keeps many traditional institutional funds from holding the shares due to strict compliance mandates. Furthermore, if the global supply of advanced graphics processors ever completely satisfies market demand, the premium rental pricing they currently enjoy will naturally compress, dinging their operational margins. But if you can look past the complex corporate structure and see the sheer velocity of their revenue growth, you realize this is one of the most mispriced infrastructure assets in the entire market. For asset number 2, we turn our attention to Marathon Digital Holdings, a company that the broader market currently despises because the underlying digital asset market is buried in a deep, grinding cyclical downturn. When an entire sector experiences asset price deflation, the retail crowd completely checks out. Assuming the business model is permanently broken and missing the massive aggressive structural pivot happening behind the scenes. Marathon has spent the last 5 years and billions of dollars in capital expenditure, assembling one of the most powerful high-capacity energy infrastructure footprints on the face of the planet. What Wall Street completely fails to digest is that the physical infrastructure required to mine digital assets is structurally identical to the physical infrastructure required to operate high-density artificial intelligence computing. Both operations require massive, multi-gigawatt grid connections, vast tracts of industrialized land, highly advanced liquid cooling infrastructure to prevent thermal throttling, and ultra-low latency fiber optic connectivity. Marathon is actively leveraging this reality by aggressively pivoting their existing power capacity away from pure-play digital asset mining and directly into the highly lucrative artificial intelligence cloud space. This structural transformation kicked into overdrive when they executed a landmark joint venture with Starwood Digital Ventures to rapidly construct over 1 gigawatt of dedicated artificial intelligence computing capacity. With a long-term roadmap to scale past 2.5 gigawatts over time, to put that number into perspective, CoreWeave is currently targeting 5 gigawatts of total capacity by the end of the decade, meaning that Marathon is quietly on track to control an infrastructure footprint half the size of the world's leading specialized cloud provider. Management recently confirmed that up to 90% of their current operational power capacity can be seamlessly converted over to artificial intelligence workloads over the coming cycles. This is the exact playbook that we saw Applied Digital execute with absolute perfection during the previous market cycle, taking their valuation from single digits to astronomical highs. Once the market realized they were no longer a speculative mining firm but a core infrastructure powerhouse, the market is valuing this asset purely based on the daily fluctuations of the digital asset spot market, which is an incredibly lazy way of analyzing a company that is sitting on massive, highly coveted grid connections. The moment they announce their first massive enterprise-grade computing customer under this new infrastructure framework, the entire analyst community will be forced to completely rate the valuation model from a cyclical mining operation to a premium data center asset. The near-term risk is that they are still fundamentally tethered to the spot price of digital assets for their legacy operations, and if that market experiences a prolonged liquidity crisis, it will severely impact their near-term balance sheet and cash flows. They also face intense competition from traditional real estate developers who are trying to retroactively upgrade legacy warehouses into data centers, but their proven ability to secure and manage gigawatt-scale power gives them an undeniable structural advantage that the market is completely discounting due to short-term sector fatigue. That brings us directly to asset number 5, which is NuScale Power, a company that represents the absolute holy grail of the global energy crisis and the ultimate bottleneck facing the entire technology sector. The simple, undeniable reality of the artificial intelligence boom is that the world is running completely out of clean, reliable, continuous electrical power to feed these massive next-generation data center clusters. A modern artificial intelligence data center consumes significantly more power than a traditional enterprise facility. And the hyperscalers cannot afford to rely on intermittent energy sources like solar or wind because their systems must run continuously 24 hours a day. Legacy nuclear facilities are completely impractical because they require 15 years to construct, cost over $20 billion in upfront capital, and demand massive custom engineering footprints that face endless regulatory blockades. NuScale is completely disrupting this entire paradigm by designing small modular reactors that can be mass-produced in a standardized factory environment, shipped directly to the site via traditional rail or truck, and assembled in a scalable configuration. Each individual module produces 77 megawatts of electricity, and developers can seamlessly stack up to 12 modules together to create a massive 900 megawatt power plant. The ultimate competitive moat for this business is that they are the single company in the entire United States that has successfully achieved full design certification from the Nuclear Regulatory Commission. Every single one of their highly publicized competitors is still buried deep within the multi-year, highly uncertain regulatory review process. While NuScale has already crossed the finish line after spending over a decade and tens of millions of dollars navigating the bureaucracy, this gives them an unprecedented first-mover advantage at the exact moment the largest technology companies on Earth are panic-buying nuclear energy assets. We are seeing Microsoft execute deals to restart retired nuclear reactors, Amazon purchasing massive nuclear-powered data center campuses, and Google signing long-term agreements to deploy small modular reactors to power their next-generation infrastructure. There is also a powerful, highly sophisticated macro connection here with the expanding commercial space economy and the upcoming structural capital events in that sector, because deep space exploration, orbital logistics, and planetary colonization are completely impossible without high-density nuclear power sources. The government and advanced aerospace agencies have already begun funneling substantial research and development funding into small modular reactor designs specifically for long-duration missions, creating an incredible dual-use narrative that will capture global capital flows as space infrastructure goes mainstream.